Hey everyone, so this is going to be the first video of a story that I share that I received from email. I'm calling it Izzy-J's story, and this was shared to me from somebody that saw my first video about being disassociated as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So this is Izzy-J's story. I will soon be 24 years old, and a couple of months ago I declared to my parents that I no longer wish to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. My younger brother and I were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses by our parents. Our parents became Jehovah's Witnesses as young adults in their 20s. I started having my doubts when I was 16 or 17 years old. It's hard to believe that at 12 years old I thought I would have a life at Bethel. But common sense started to creep in, and I wanted to set myself up with a career. I graduated from a technical high school in 2014 where I studied electronics. The best path to continue in this field of study is to pursue electrical engineering after high school, which requires a university education. Unfortunately, we both know how Jehovah's Witnesses feel about college and higher education. So I convinced my parents to allow me to attend a community college for a technical certificate. Becoming a technician was not my first choice, but it was a stepping stone to bigger and better things. After the initial shock of me pursuing post-secondary education died down, I transitioned to electrical engineering and officially changed my major at school. This was a costly decision as my graduation timeline reset and I was way behind on prerequisite courses. I was especially discouraged in the spring of 2016 when I realized I could have been a technician working full-time at that point if I had never changed majors. It would have been relieving to no longer be ridiculed by members of the congregation for attending college, but I was in too deep and I pressed forward. Things got difficult again in 2017 when I finally graduated from the community college I was attending and transferred to a university. I had no choice but to live on campus since the commute time would be impractical. You can imagine how anyone in the congregation would feel upon hearing I was now living in a dorm room at that point. After a long 5 years, I finally earned my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering in May 2019. I am now working full-time as an electrical engineer, and I'm happy to say that my life can now begin. I tried living at home briefly in the months following my graduation. However, after skipping meetings and field service for nearly 2 years, I was quickly fatigued when I was forced to return to a routine that I no longer believed in. I tried to wear my fake identity as one of Jehovah's Witnesses for as long as I could bear it. My parents were so proud of me for making it through college and remaining as one of Jehovah's Witnesses up to that point. Almost nobody is able to do that. It has become clear to me that higher education promotes critical thinking and sound reasoning, which are the enemy of Watchtower's model of instruction. In the weeks following my graduation, my dad and I would go out to a restaurant after each midweek meeting to celebrate my success. It's sad that I will probably never have that relationship with my dad again. In January 2020, I moved out of my parents' house and I was at peace for a couple of months. However, it soon became painfully obvious to my parents that I was not actually attending meetings when living on my own. So I was forced to send a letter to them in March explaining my problems with their religion and how it was my intention for over 5 years to ultimately leave and that I needed to stay quiet about my opinions in order to get through college. I'll share the letter that he wrote to his parents later in this. A little bit later. My relationship with my parents is forever shattered. My brother is currently disfellowshipped for something unrelated. He was caught getting too close with a girl at a party, but they did not even sleep together. It's amazing how strict Watchtower's policies are these days. I have urged him to stay out and rebuild his life, but he insists on following their procedures to get reinstated. I think he is much closer to our parents and his friends in the congregation, which is why he is having trouble separating. I have attached my photo, the letter I sent to my parents, and the response I received from my mother. I hope my story can be a source of encouragement for you because you are not alone in your struggle. Despite what any active member may say to you, please know that you are not crazy for leaving. In fact, you are among the few who can objectively evaluate their own religion and make a decision based on facts, not emotions. Be proud of your accomplishment. There are many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have woken up and left Watchtower at great cost. I would be happy to share more of my story or discuss your story if you're interested. So that was his email to me. And then he shared with me the letter that he wrote to his parents. Dear Mom and Dad, by the way, this is very lengthy. Dear Mom and Dad, I want you to think about when you were a young adult in your 20s. What was your experience like in the early years when you first started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses? Were you convinced that you had all the answers to attain the best life possible? How frustrating was it when your family did not share your viewpoints? Did your parents and siblings try to convince you that you were wrong? When you held your position against their wishes, how did they treat you? Did you appreciate any of the social distancing you experienced during that time? How many years passed before your family fully accepted who you were as an individual? I hope these questions give you the right frame of mind for what I will discuss in this letter. I am now in the same predicament that you were many years ago. I can only hope that you have learned from your experience and will be more open-minded and accepting toward the next generation. I have many problems with Jehovah's Witnesses as an organization, but I cannot explain everything that I disagree with in just a few pages. The purpose of this letter is to identify the main flaws in the religion and explain my reasons for leaving. First, I no longer want to live with a defeatist attitude. Many Jehovah's Witnesses use their beliefs about the future as an excuse for their actions or inaction in the present. For example, I am not going to attend college and pursue a career because Armageddon could happen within the next couple of years. Or, I'm not going to eat healthy and exercise because God is going to give me a perfect body in paradise. Or, I'm not going to save for retirement because the end is near. Or, I am not going to leave a toxic and abusive relationship because God can fix my broken marriage in the new system. Or finally, I am not going to do anything to improve my community because God will clean up everything in the near future. These are some examples of the mentality which I was exposed to growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I've found that this type of thinking is dangerous because it has hindered my joy for life and fostered a negative view of the world. I think many people, including myself, have experienced a lot of anxiety and depression from actually believing that so many important aspects of life are completely out of their control. On the contrary, I have learned that many of these things are directly influenced by my actions and the decisions I make each day. I will explain how taking a different perspective on life has benefited me in recent years. Regarding secular work and daily life, there were many talks at meetings and conventions in which Jehovah's Witnesses claimed that the world is moaning and groaning every day. Perhaps if I still worked as a general laborer, I might agree that secular work is a painful experience and Armageddon is the only answer to all the problems I'm experiencing from working a low-paying, dead-end job. However, as a full-time electrical engineer, I can tell you that I am definitely not moaning and groaning every day, as Jehovah's Witnesses claim. I love my career and everything that I'm learning in school. I do not dread Monday mornings because my job provides satisfying and meaningful work each day. I have a great manager and my colleagues are nice people. I never have to worry about monthly expenses or maintaining an emergency fund because my job pays very well. If I listened to Jehovah's Witnesses as a teenager and never attended college, then I never would have experienced the level of job satisfaction that I now have as an electrical engineer. I used to experience chronic illness and fatigue, which negatively affected my overall quality of life. Whenever I thought about improving my physical health with good nutrition and exercise, I was constantly reminded of 1 Timothy 4:8, which says, "For physical training is beneficial for a little, but godly devotion is beneficial for all things, as it holds promise of the life now and the life that is to come." You may already have certain emotions from reading this verse. From my perspective, the intention behind showing someone this Bible verse is to invalidate their ambition to better themselves and convince the person that exercising is a waste of time because spiritual matters are more important. Even if you disagree with my conclusion, I can say that I used to interpret this Bible verse as a reason to feel guilty about developing a good diet and exercise routine. Well, I no longer live by such restrictions on my ambition. I started making healthier choices at the grocery store, and I went back to the gym more regularly. In a matter of weeks, my endurance on a treadmill increased from 1 mile to 2 miles to 4 miles, and eventually over 5 miles. I can honestly say that I feel great. When I exercise regularly, I have a lot more energy and stamina throughout the day, and my sleeping habits at night are much more consistent. This is yet another joy in my life that I never would have discovered if I kept listening to Jehovah's Witnesses and the Bible verses they use to defend their implied rules. The second problem I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is that almost all their beliefs contradict their own logic. For example, consider the celebration of birthdays. What is the reason that Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate birthdays? Jehovah's Witnesses would say that the Bible does not explicitly instruct us to celebrate birthdays. Moreover, there are only 2 birthdays recorded in the Bible, and both ended in the murder of innocent people. Therefore, true Christians should not celebrate birthdays. If we follow this logic, then we can conclude that true Christians should not own dogs either. The Bible does not explicitly instruct us to own dogs. Moreover, the few scriptures in the Bible that mention dogs do so with a negative connotation. Below, I've listed some of the scriptures in the Bible that mention dogs. Matthew 7:6. "Do not give what is holy to dogs, nor throw your pearls before swine, so that they may never trample them under their feet and turn around and rip you open." Job 30, verse 1. "Now they laugh at me, men younger than I am, whose fathers I would have refused to put with the dogs that guarded my flock." Exodus 22:31. "You should prove yourselves holy people to me, and you must not eat the flesh of anything in the field that has been torn by a wild animal. You should throw it to the dogs." Philippians 3:2. "Look out for the dogs. Look out for those who cause injury. Look out for those who mutilate the flesh." The ban on the celebration of birthdays is not an exception to the various policies implemented by Jehovah's Witnesses. There are other rules that I will briefly mention. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses refuse blood transfusions, even in a life or death scenario? Jehovah's Witnesses would point to Acts 15:20, which states, excuse me, "Abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from what is strangled, and from blood." They claim that this rule must be followed under all circumstances without exception. But consider another rule that was thought to be followed under all circumstances without exception. Recall the Mosaic Law and the observance of the Sabbath. In ancient times, it was believed that there was no exception in which work could be permitted on the Sabbath day. Yet Jesus himself broke this rule when he cured a sick man on the Sabbath day. At John 5:16-18, it says, "For this reason the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things during the Sabbath. But he answered them, 'My Father has kept working until now, and I keep working.' This is why the Jews began seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was also calling God his own Father." If Jesus could break the Mosaic Law to mercifully cure a sick man on the Sabbath day, why do Jehovah's Witnesses feel that they cannot make an exception regarding the rule about blood when a blood transfusion may save their own lives or the lives of their loved ones? The person who wrote Acts 15:20 probably did not anticipate the medical technology that would be available in the 21st century, which is why they could not think of an exception to the rule. Ironically, many Jehovah's Witnesses have unknowingly consumed blood anyway. Milk contains white blood cells, whether the milk is obtained from a nursing mother or a cow. Think about how many times you've added half and half to your coffee each morning. By definition, you've already consumed blood regularly for many years now. Yet Jehovah's Witnesses insist on letting innocent people die each year due to their extreme interpretation of a single Bible verse. The last rule I want to mention is the ban on male Jehovah's Witnesses having beards. I wouldn't recommend female Jehovah's Witnesses having beards either. That's just a side note by me. There's no scriptural basis for this rule because people that were alive in Bible times commonly grew beards. Jesus himself had a beard. Jehovah's Witnesses would say that men are not allowed to have beards because it appears unprofessional and their appearance must be clean and presentable in the modern era. I would disagree with this statement entirely because there are many male professionals with well-groomed beards these days, and they appear clean and presentable by modern standards. But I will take this line of reasoning one step further. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses even care about the world's standards? Most of the time, Jehovah's Witnesses mock the world's standard of cleanliness and morality anyway. If the Bible permits men to wear a beard, then male Jehovah's Witnesses should be allowed to wear beards, regardless of what the world thinks. In fact, Jehovah's Witnesses have often touted that they are no part of the world. Can you see why someone who's using critical thinking might feel that there is no real basis for the rules imposed by Jehovah's Witnesses? The third problem I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is their gross misogyny toward women in the organization. Women do not have the same privileges as men in the congregation. They are forbidden from giving public talks or holding positions of authority. If they conduct a Bible study in the presence of a man, they must wear a head covering while doing so. Women are expected to wear a dress, not pants, during any formal spiritual activity. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that wives must submit to their husbands and support all of the husband's decisions, whether they're good or bad. In general, it is frowned upon when a woman expresses an opinion that is contrary to her husband's opinion. I have heard horror stories of victim blaming when women have tried to seek help from the elders in cases of domestic abuse and neglect. The elders usually start the conversation with, "What did you do to provoke this?" It also amazes me that a man and a woman can both work full-time jobs and equally contribute to the mortgage on their house, but the elders will always ask the man for permission to conduct a shepherding call. The Western world has fought hard to undo centuries of patriarchy and female oppression. I'm no longer going to support the rampant sexism that Jehovah's Witnesses have instituted in their organization. If I had a daughter, I would want her to grow up and reach her full potential. I would not want Jehovah's Witnesses to make her believe that she is inferior to men or that she cannot pursue a career in a male-dominated industry. Also, my goal is to earn the respect of my future wife legitimately through my words and actions. I do not agree with using Bible verses to manipulate someone into submission against their better judgment. The fourth problem I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is their requirements to be an active member. As one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you're expected to attend Sunday meetings, attend midweek meetings, participate in door-to-door preaching, study for said meetings, and engage in personal Bible reading, all while working a full-time job. You're also expected to travel to assemblies and conventions several times per year at your own expense. This religion is not a set of guidelines for living a good life. This religion is a part-time job, which I no longer want to have. I will not miss waking up early on Saturday mornings to spend half the day being a public nuisance and getting doors slammed in my face. I will not miss the gaslighting on Sundays from the organization's Watchtower articles. I will not miss giving up several of my evenings during the work week for even more studying and meetings. I will certainly not miss being shamed by others for choosing to spend my free time either at the gym or at school. I am reclaiming my life and my free time. The fifth problem that I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is the overly sensitive culture that is prevalent throughout the organization. I am just tired of dealing with people who believe their opinion is more important than the free will of others. Many Jehovah's Witnesses have demonstrated through their words and deeds that they believe they have the right to pry into your personal life and judge you based on what they deem to be good and bad. I do not think I need to elaborate on how many people disapproved of my decision to go to college and were quite vocal about their disapproval. The elders in several congregations constantly advised me to drop out of school and just work a dead-end job like everybody else. On another occasion, there was one individual who was offended by my choice to go skydiving. They reported me to the elders because they happened to see a photo of me in a skydiving uniform on social media. I never found out who this individual was because they never spoke to me directly. In addition, many Jehovah's Witnesses are forced to hide their movies and books whenever they have guests in their home because they fear that their choice of entertainment might offend someone else. How many times did we have to hide our Star Wars and James Bond movie collection when other Jehovah's Witnesses visited our house because we were afraid of offending them? You yourselves have experienced this culture when others were offended by your choice to work jobs that involved any overtime, which prevented you from having perfect attendance at the meetings. I personally believe that whatever I do in my personal time is nobody's business except mine. I am done with being subjected to the many unwritten rules that Jehovah's Witnesses impose on each other without any sound logic or reason. The sixth problem I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is their overall superficial attitude. For one thing, Jehovah's Witnesses are experts at using strong language to motivate specific emotions in their members. They've created great fear and animosity toward anyone who is not like them. What do you think of when you hear phrases like worldly person, marked, disfellowshipped, disassociated, or apostate? These words bring up strong emotions because Jehovah's Witnesses have trained their members to feel a certain way before knowing any of the facts about the individual in question. Why is it dangerous to listen to someone who has been labeled as an apostate? I believe that truth will always stand the test of scrutiny. If you are convinced of the law of gravity, then you can confidently listen to an individual who is arguing that the law of gravity is false. No matter what the person says, you will always conclude that the law of gravity is true and valid because the law of gravity is testable and consistent with the other laws of physics. However, there's a problem with listening to an apostate. An apostate can show you Bible verses or even watchtower articles that either disprove or contradict the most fundamental beliefs that Jehovah's Witnesses have. The governing body recognizes this vulnerability. That is why they've done everything they can to limit your exposure to different people with different ideas and have trained their members to be afraid of anyone who is capable of critical thinking. The seventh problem I have with Jehovah's Witnesses is that they are not following their own rules at the corporate level. Through various talks and publications, they've stated both implicitly and explicitly that members should not have a lot of money and instead be content with the bare necessities. They have taught their followers to rely on Jehovah as their emergency fund. But if you look at their recent tax returns as a corporate entity, you will find that their annual revenue ranges between $1 billion and $2 billion. They have so much money that most of these funds are invested in various stocks and bonds. Were you aware that Jehovah's Witnesses hold about 100,000 shares of Disney stock? They hold hundreds of thousands of shares in other Fortune 500 companies as well. Their money keeps growing every year, and they pay no taxes on their capital gains or dividends because they file as a religious organization. Despite all of this, they still ask their followers for more and more donations each year. They are not being content with sustenance and covering, as they often advise their members. Jehovah's Witnesses also have a pattern of selling more buildings than they're constructing. They have consolidated many congregations into fewer kingdom halls, which resulted in longer commute times to meetings for many publishers. Then they profited from the sales of the old buildings. In Puerto Rico, volunteers built over 100 new kingdom halls under the guise of disaster relief after a major hurricane, Hurricane Maria. In the months following the volunteer work, about half of these new Kingdom Halls were sold for profit. I saw the listings myself on a real estate website. The properties were listed for $200,000 to $400,000 each. Jehovah's Witnesses are also applying this business model to many Bethel properties for even larger profits. Basically, the organization has found a way to convert volunteer construction labor into cash. I'm tired of supporting their cash flow by distributing their literature in my free time with my own resources. In fact, I would like to attain the same level of financial security that Jehovah's Witnesses have achieved at the corporate level. I want a good amount of revenue, a real emergency fund, not just prayers and Bible verses, and plenty of investments that pay me dividends each year. If you think my goals are unwholesome or materialistic, then I suggest you hold Jehovah's Witnesses to the same criticism. They are not relying on Jehovah as they tell you to do. They are relying on capitalism and unsuspecting volunteers for their financial security. I have learned that there is good and bad on both sides. There are good people as well as bad people who are Jehovah's Witnesses. There are also good people as well as bad people whom you would label as worldly people. But the language Jehovah's Witnesses use is intended to give you a sense of belonging within the organization. Why do you think they refer to members as friends and the organization as a whole as the brotherhood? I've learned the hard way that people who simply belong to the same religion as you are not necessarily your best friends. When I was unemployed and struggling financially, there was nobody who could truly help me during those hard times. I remember walking into the Kingdom Hall at each meeting and watching people smile at me and ask, "How's it going?" I told them exactly what my situation was and that I desperately needed help finding a job. Almost every time, I got a pat on the back followed by some empty words like, "Don't worry, you'll find something." Any stranger could have done exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses did. However, I was expected to believe that Jehovah's Witnesses are special and will always be there for me in my time of need. The reality is that I had to struggle for several years in college before I was finally able to pay off the debt I owed you when I was borrowing money just to drive my car to school each week. I was able to lift myself up out of my financial mess with my own work ethic, not with the help of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm done believing that the congregation is a safe haven or that being one of Jehovah's Witnesses offers any kind of protection against calamity. I've learned that I am on my own regardless of which religion I choose to follow. I no longer wish to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I hope this letter makes that abundantly clear. I've recently donated blood because I care about saving the lives of my fellow humans. I'm registered to vote in the next election because I care about being a responsible citizen in my community. I am dating without an immediate view to marriage because I do not want to rush into a marriage with the wrong person, as many Jehovah's Witnesses have done. I'm sorry that these actions are forbidden by your religion. You are free to print this letter as proof of my wrongdoing to have me disfellowshipped from the organization. In fact, I've been anticipating this day for several years now. Since I was a teenager, I recognized the need to set up my life before taking a stand and telling you how I really feel about the religion I grew up with. If I were kicked out of your house at 18 years old because I disagreed with your religion, then I would have struggled to provide for myself and never would have attained a truly fulfilling career. I've become self-sufficient financially, and my entire support group is now outside of the organization. As a result, my life would not change at all if you decided to pursue judicial action from the congregation. As you struggle with the decision of whether or not to report me, I hope you realize that all of your perceived stress and guilt is solely dependent on remaining as Jehovah's Witnesses yourself. There is a lot less gloom and doom on the other side. I can tell you that there is life after Jehovah's Witnesses. You may feel that my preparation was underhanded because I've left nothing for the organization with which to threaten me. I would argue that punishing one of your members by leaving them financially and emotionally destitute at the most critical point in their life is cruel and unbefitting a Christian organization that is supposedly based on love. In case it means anything, I would have welcomed the opportunity to express everything I was thinking and feeling as a teenager. Unfortunately, this religion instructs parents to punish and even disown their teenagers for simply having a different opinion about religion. Because I was aware of this fact, I had no choice but to wait until I was out of the organization's clutches before I could release this information. Please note that the disfellowshipping procedure can do a lot more emotional harm to the offender's family than to the offender himself in cases like mine. You may have to endure the stress of multiple meetings with the elders in which they will pry into your personal life to determine what you could have done differently to prevent your child from becoming an independent thinker. You may feel embarrassed and humiliated when the announcement is made in front of the entire congregation that another one of your children is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You may even feel ashamed and lonely when the people you thought were lifelong friends suddenly stop associating with you because of what your children have decided to do with their lives. I hope that one day you will see that all this pain imposed by the organization is completely avoidable by simply leaving. There are billions of people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses and still have a happy life. My colleagues have proven to me that you can be a good spouse or parent without being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You can be a good person in your community without reading the Bible. A person's happiness is not dependent on whether they are a member of your organization. As for me, I'm going to move on with my life without even looking back on what I have left behind. I have a long career ahead of me and real friends that accept me for who I am regardless of which religion I may choose. I hope you will soon realize that being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is much more of a burden than a blessing. When you are attending the 2035 regional convention, and there is inevitably another talk advising young people not to pursue higher education because Armageddon is only a few short years away, will you still believe it with the same enthusiasm as you did back in 2014? When you retire in a few years, and your 401k account is only a small fraction of what you need to live comfortably because you spent a lifetime avoiding worldly pursuits, will you finally recognize the value in pursuing education and establishing a career? When Jehovah's Witnesses are requesting donations for yet another building project, will you finally see that this organization is more concerned about generating revenue than helping you personally? I've already learned all of these lessons, and I hope that you can too. If I do not hear back from you, then all I can say is farewell and thank you for getting me this far in life. I've decided that the best use of my life is to pursue the things that I know will eventually pay off. I'm going to earn my master's degree and possibly earn a PhD. I want to start my own company and be my own boss one day. I will always take care of myself and maintain relationships with those who are most important to me. But I must revoke my membership as one of Jehovah's Witnesses because my goals are clearly not compatible with the organization's goals. I will no longer let my life be piloted by those who do not have my best interests in mind. Sincerely, Izzy-J. Now for the response that Izzy-J received from his mother. It's also interesting that many times it's the mother who responds to these types of messages, although the father is supposed to be the head of the household. So his mom says, "Dear Izzy, thank you for taking the time to explain your feelings and your decision. Although we do not agree with your views, we respect your right to have views that differ from ours. After all, Jehovah gave all humans the gift of free will. No one is forced to serve Jehovah. We are not robots programmed to obey. We love you and will continue our open relationship with you. We would never try to force you to serve him either. I would like to address just a few things. Regarding the moaning and groaning, you may not personally see it, but the facts show that life is difficult and stressful for many. While you are enjoying a good life here in the USA, many around the world are going hungry due to corrupt governments, drought, and food shortages. Wildlife around the globe are dying off, and many species become extinct daily. The earth is polluted, critical forests are being destroyed, the polar ice caps are melting, and we have a devastating effect of global warming. And now we all face the real threat of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even the increase of natural disasters can be linked to man's destruction of the environment. I'm glad you're taking better care of your health and exercising. While there are some immature Christians who use the truth as an excuse to be lazy, this is not in harmony with God's word. The Bible promotes a good work ethic and respect for the life that Jehovah has given us. We show our appreciation for life by caring for ourselves the best way possible. I know for a fact that this point is emphasized at Pioneer School because I've heard about it from our local pioneers who have adopted the habit of regular exercise. Have you noticed that the majority of circuit overseers and Bethel workers and Gilead graduates appear fit and healthy? The scriptures simply remind us that the kingdom should be first in our lives, but there is room for exercise and other healthy habits. I'm not surprised that you feel so much better now that you exercise regularly, and I'm glad that you're doing so. Regarding birthdays, Jesus did not celebrate his birthday. This was a pagan custom, and the Jews, God's chosen people at that time, did not celebrate birthdays. This is the primary reason Jehovah's people today do not follow this pagan custom. Our belief on this matter is not primarily for the reasons you mention. Do some research on the custom of celebrating birthdays and you'll find that it is all based on pagan beliefs. Cakes, candles, and presents. Look it up. Finally, there is no ban on brothers having a beard. In fact, in some countries, it is normal and acceptable. However, we do not want to do anything that might give the general public cause for stumbling, so each man must consider this when choosing for himself whether to grow a beard or not. Regarding finances, we all must provide for ourselves, and putting kingdom interest first does not mean we have to be poor. Many in the organization have money as a result of hard work and God's blessings. Your father and I have a retirement plan, and this money is invested in the stock market, and I do not view this as wrong. So if the organization has done this with donated funds, I am glad that they have been able to grow these funds because they will surely be needed as the end draws near. Recently, it was mentioned on a broadcast, the money spent to care for disaster relief efforts has doubled due to the increase in natural disasters worldwide. I am glad you are happy, but if you have a change of heart, please know that we would welcome you back with open arms. But in the meantime, there is no reason for you to avoid us. We still would like to hear from you. We have no intention of reporting you or trying to get you disfellowshipped. Really, there is no need. You have left the organization and no longer claim to be a member. If you meet someone special and dating becomes serious, I hope you will introduce us. Maybe we have different views, but we are still family and we will always love you. I am sure we could sit down to a meal and enjoy each other's company. As for me personally, I've been serving Jehovah for over 30 years and I will not give up, even if the end does not come during my natural life. I will die serving Jehovah because I love my Heavenly Father Jehovah and His Son Jesus. I believe in the resurrection and the paradise to come, but this is not the primary reason that I serve Jehovah. I firmly believe Jehovah is the rightful ruler of mankind, and He always has our best interest at heart because He loves us very much. Now, your brother will be moving out next weekend, and my husband and I are looking forward to having more privacy. With that in mind, we ask that you do not come to the house and let yourself in without calling first. As you may know, our vacation plans for May have been postponed due to the pandemic. Just a final FYI, we have taken your diplomas off the wall and stored them in the attic for you. They will remain there until you choose to come to get them. We love you, Mom and Dad. And then Izzy-J sent me one final email that says, I do want to point out that I was never disfellowshipped or disassociated. Right now, I would officially be considered inactive. I found a loophole in the system that I think you may want to share with others. I made 2 major changes that seriously inhibit any control the elders may have on me. First, I changed my address by moving out of my parents' house and into an apartment. Second, I changed congregations as soon as I moved out of my parents' house. I think I attended only 3 or 4 meetings at the new congregation before I disappeared entirely. The elders in the new congregation have my publisher card and are fully aware that I belong to their congregation. However, they do not know me well enough to pester me. They also do not know where I live. So they are unable to show up at my door for questioning. I only received a couple of text messages and 1 voicemail before they stopped contacting me in early March. Of course, I blocked their numbers as soon as they attempted to contact me. I'm confident that they have given up on pursuing me for any judicial action. The elders in the old congregation, who knew me very well, are powerless to do anything because they no longer have my publisher's cards. Therefore, I'm no longer in their jurisdiction. I have no friends or family in the new congregation, so there is nobody there to present any evidence of my wrongdoing. This is the perfect scenario for fading away uninterrupted. Now I'd like to share some inside information that I gained from my personal research. Most Jehovah's Witnesses are familiar with the term inactive with regard to a publisher's status in the congregation. Officially, elders will consider any individual who does not attend meetings or field service for 6 consecutive months to be inactive. However, if the inactive publisher also skips the memorial, they will no longer be counted as one of Jehovah's Witnesses from that point onward. At that point, the elders will no longer try to contact the inactive publisher or seek judicial action because they are unofficially removed from the congregation. I say unofficially because the elders are not allowed to disfellowship the inactive publisher without any strong evidence of wrongdoing. But the elders will not bother seeking out evidence either. It is definitely advantageous to be in a perpetual state of don't ask, don't tell, if one prefers to maintain some contact with immediate family members and maybe some close friends. It is important to note that the elders may try one final test to catch a fading publisher. The elders will invite the individual to a special meeting for encouragement, which will actually be a judicial hearing unbeknownst to them. The test is very simple. If the fading publisher accepts the invitation to the meeting, they will immediately be considered part of the congregation again and will be held accountable. They will also be questioned heavily in an attempt to gather evidence of wrongdoing. If the fading publisher declines the invitation to the meeting or ignores the elders entirely, then the elders will have no choice but to drop their investigation and let the fading publisher escape. The elders in my new congregation have not tried this yet, but I'm ready for it if it ever happens. I thought this information might be valuable to anyone who might be fleeing from the organization. Feel free to share anything in this email. So I want to personally thank Izzy-J, which is an alias, of course. But thank you for sharing your story with me, and thank you for sharing it with the community. I think it's important that people hear the different experiences and strategies that many of us have used to navigate our escape from the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. And in saying that, I also want to mention that it's hard to say those words because everybody that we love and know are still part of that organization. All of the friends that we grew up with, all of the families that we were close to, including our own family, are still part of that organization. And it's hard to say, we had to strategize our escape to get away from them, because all of these individual people are wonderful, loving, warm people and friendships that we long to retain. However, their loyalty to the organization as it exists is stronger than the love and loyalty that they have with oftentimes their own family members. And that's really the difficult thing to face. But I appreciate despite the lengthy message that it was, I appreciate the detail that Izzy-J was willing to share regarding his situation. In this case, he was speaking directly to secular work and higher education. So this is something that is important to many people that are maybe younger and trying to find their path in life. So I wanted to share this story first. I have several other emails that I'm going to share in future videos, but I wanted to share this one since it's the longest one that I've received so far. But I'm open to more stories and more experiences if you want to share them. And again, if you want your name to be changed, we can do so. So I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry for it being so long again, but the information's important, and I know many people want to share their stories, but are timid about sharing it directly in person. So I think this is a nice outlet for those ones. So please let me know in the comments what you think of this story. If you have any questions or thoughts, or if you want to share your story, please email me. That will also be in the description. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.